Doing business today involves the element of chance because there are many risks. Since the day I went into business for myself, I've always kept this gadget on my desk to remind me of the gamble in doing business. It's helped me to find the hidden key to business survival and success. I say gamble in doing business because of the risks involved. Risks that maybe you haven't thought about lately. The risk of the availability of working capital is present in the small as well as the expanding business. There are many influences from the outside that become risks, from the inevitable high taxes to the important job of timely deliveries. The problems of product obsolescence, increased competition, reduced profit margins, all involve risks. There's the risk of getting and keeping proper personnel. These and many more risks are involved in doing business today. However, there is a factor that takes much of this gamble out of business, and that's the human element, the most essential element to business success. This trio is that human element, with ambition and ability and teamwork. This is Walter, with a knack for overall organization and thorough handling of details. He has good connections at the bank.
I wouldn't worry about it, either of you. I'm sure we'll get the loan.
This is George, an expert on any production problem. With his easy smile and quick humor, he's very good at handling employees.
Just give me one more lathe and an operator.
Yes, the team had two Mr. Insides and Bob, Mr. Outside. A good mixer, a low-handicap golfer, and the best contacts in the field, plus the ability to follow them up and make sales.
And all I have to do is get the business.
And if you don't, Bob, we'll give you the business.
Take it from me, 3 men like that make quite a team. I'm Bill Edwards, and since I believe that next to knowing your own business, you should know the business of your competitors, I can tell you quite a bit about Bob, Walter, and George. They were our top competition. They became partners because each man's talents and personality blended into a fine working combination. After the usual growing pains, they incorporated to avoid unnecessary income taxes and to limit their personal liability. Let me tell you what happened. A hard-to-beat team, these competitors of mine, always moving ahead. Walter had swung the loan at the bank, and they really got busy. They weren't afraid of work, and were often hard at it far into the night. Since their families were close friends, they could combine business with pleasure.
Oh, say, Bob, Ruth called late this afternoon. Said she couldn't get hold of Mary today. She wants you to ask her about the barbecue Sunday at our house. George and Helen are coming.
We are?
Well, you can see who's boss at his house.
Well, maybe we ought to have the wives boss the outfit.
Yeah, I can see that. They know as much about running this business as we do about cooking. Which reminds me, Walter, are you planning to cremate the steaks again?
Please, Walter, not that.
Now, don't worry, George. I have a brand new system.
Yeah, but I got the same old stomach.
Working together as a team, these 3 men did all they could to take the risks out of doing business. They had protection against many types of losses. They insisted on careful maintenance to keep equipment in top condition. Good working surroundings and benefits kept employees happy. And yet, they gambled. They gambled on the most important business asset, the human element.
Where's Bob? He's half an hour late.
Well, he looked kind of sick out at your house yesterday, right after those steaks.
Oh, now, my cooking wasn't that bad. Yes? My wife? Sure, put her on. Hello, Ruth. Wait a minute, I can't understand you. You said that Mary called. Are you sure? All right, dear. We'll be there right away.
What's going on?
Mary just called Ruth. Bob's had a heart attack.
What?
Bob's dead.
No. I can't believe it.
I told Ruth we'd be right over.
And so they learned about another gamble in doing business. Well, as you can imagine, it was a rough shock. A firm cannot stand still. It must move constantly forward. The loss of Bob meant a loss in momentum, and replacing him immediately would be impossible. Besides, a new man wouldn't have Bob's contacts. They would have to do it all themselves. Things were happening that worried both men. That important feeling of confidence was fading. And it didn't help to have outsiders worried, too. Both creditors and customers were wondering what arrangements had been made to carry on the business.
Well, of course we're going to miss him. But we're going ahead full steam. You know the old saying, no man is indispensable. Okay. Thanks for calling.
Walter, there are a couple of things I wanted to check with you on.
And both are bad, no doubt.
Yeah, I'm afraid so. Henry just gave me his notice.
Oh, no. He's the third one to quit. Why?
I couldn't get much out of him. I think he's worried about our situation.
Boy, it never rains but it pours. Which reminds me, I thought you were going to check on that complaint. They were a good account.
I haven't had time. I never have time to do anything right.
Yeah, I know. Me too.
Walter, do you think we can go ahead?
Of course we can. We've got to.
What about Mary? We've always said the families could look to the business for help if anything happened to one of us.
We'll straighten things out with Mary later. Right now, she has Bob's insurance. We have enough to worry about.
I'm afraid we'll have to consider it now. Mary's lawyer called. He's handling Bob's estate, and he wants to know what sort of financial arrangement we plan to make with her.
Why can't we settle that with Mary? Do we have to deal with him?
The estate's in probate, and he's handling Mary's affairs. That's all there is to it. He wants to see us, so I said we'd meet with him.
I suppose that means money. We can't pay her Bob's salary. Well, we don't even have anyone to take his place. She couldn't. George, I'll tell you right now, as fond as we are of Mary, we can't be expected to do all the work and split equally with her when she can contribute nothing.
Well, of course, Walter, but don't you feel we owe it to Bob? Isn't there some way we can take care of Mary without wrecking the business?
You name it.
I guess the best way would be to buy her out.
With what?
Well, how about out of future profits?
That's possible, if she can wait. And providing we could agree on a price with Mary and her lawyer. If we can't, it's a sure thing she'll be thinking about selling to one of our competitors.
Do you really think Mary would do that to us?
Legally, she can sell to anybody she wants to, wherever she can get the highest price for the stock.
But I don't think Mary would do that.
I wouldn't be too sure of that, George. If she doesn't think of it, you can bet her lawyer will. We ought to be thankful we're incorporated. If we were still a partnership, she could have the court force us to liquidate. We should have had an agreement.
We should have had an agreement with what Walter said. Yes, a simple buy and sell agreement, made when all the partners were alive, would have eliminated what the two face now. It would have removed the fears, doubts, and confusion they now feel. You see, such an agreement would have bound Mary to sell her interest to the corporation, or to Walter and George. It also would have required the corporation or Walter and George to buy. It would have been a different story. But then, of course, every story has two sides. Bob's widow, Mary, was shocked to discover that even though he had nearly $40,000 of life insurance, after paying doctor bills, funeral costs, and probate expenses, plus inheritance taxes, the amount she had left to last a lifetime for her and her children was less than Bob's salary for 1 year. Mary's lawyer was not interested in sentiment, but in a fair settlement for his client, and soon.
Mary, I know how you feel about Walter and George. You don't wish to press them, but you simply must face facts. Now, let me see if I can summarize what we've been talking about for the last hour or so.
It's rather confusing.
I know, but it's most important. Now, we should demand that they buy you out, in cash, at a fair price. Now, we shouldn't accept terms, because without Bob there, we could never be sure of your getting your fair share. They would be getting the benefits of all the profits if everything goes well. If it doesn't, you would be the loser. Now, Mary, they're going to get everything they can out of this business if they see that it's going under. Now, believe me, even though there were relatives involved, my advice is still the same. Get your full and fair share of this business now.
I suppose you're right.
I know I am. Now, if they can't pay a fair cash price, we can insist that they give you an equal salary and an expense account. Or we'll threaten to sell to a competitor.
Well, that's a possibility, I should think. It's a good business. Or was.
We can take them to court and force them to pay dividends, make them justify every dime of salary and expense money that they draw. We can question every move they make. After all, there are laws to protect the minority stockholder.
But they're my friends.
You know, Mary, it's difficult to tell what people will do when they're in a tough spot. And believe me, they're in one. But in all fairness to you, you must realize that your position is not a very happy one either.
Well, what do you mean? I thought I owned 1/3 of the company. Bob always told me the business would take care of me and the children.
Now, if this were a partnership, we could demand liquidation or a complete reorganization. But, Mary, since it's a corporation, they can, legally at least, attempt to continue.
But where do I fit in the picture?
Well, you are a minority stockholder with no control, and there was no agreement that required them to buy you out. And frankly, I don't think they could buy you out on any basis that would be satisfactory to us.
Can't they just pay me cash? I'll sell.
No, Mary, there is no cash. Like any other growing business, their cash is invested in the firm.
Well, then, couldn't they borrow it?
No, I'm afraid they couldn't borrow any more now under these conditions, especially without Bob.
I wish I could take Bob's place. What did you mean about selling to a competitor?
Well, like Bill Edwards. But Mary, remember, it's only a threat. Actually, who would want to buy a minority interest in a business situation like this? And at what kind of a price?
I see what you mean. Well, then how about dividends? I thought when you owned stock, they paid you in dividends.
Well, that depends. Most closely held corporations don't pay dividends. Walter and George will certainly not want to pay dividends if for no other reason than to avoid double taxes. They'd much rather take it in salaries, which are deductible by a corporation. And remember, they have majority control.
Yes, I know.
Now, Mary, I'm not saying that they'll do this, but I have seen it happen before. The owners will bleed the company of all earnings in the form of salaries and expense accounts.
Oh, I can't believe that Walter and George would do that.
Mary, with them having majority control and with the business needing cash, I'm afraid we'd have a hard fight forcing them to pay dividends. Anyway, you probably wouldn't get enough in dividends for you and the children to live on. You couldn't count on it for future income.
I just can't understand it. Bob always said the business would take care of us in case something happened to him. That's why he worked so hard. Why we did without so many things at first, to build a business.
Now, Mary, try not to worry. That's why I've called this meeting with Walter and George. I guarantee we'll salvage something for you. Excuse me. Yes? Oh, have them come right in, please. Now, Mary, try not to let your emotions sway you. This is more than a business meeting. The future of you and your children hinges on what happens here. You just let me handle it.
A lifetime is at stake for Mary. And for George and Walter. The attorney will insist on a price and cash. George and Walter will try to save the business, which needs all their cash. Their careers are at stake. The important meeting began, and it soon became apparent they were working at cross purposes. After all, it was an almost impossible gamble that they could reach an agreement with such sharply conflicting interests. It's strange how old friendships can be wrecked so easily and so disastrously. They tried. All of them tried. But there just wasn't any answer. When Walter and George walked out, they closed the door on their hopes and dreams.
It happens every time. If only they'd made a simple, fair agreement while Bob was still alive. All of this could have been avoided. Well, it's too late now.
Yes, there's the really big risk of this gamble of doing business. Those three men were our top competition. And when my partners and I saw what happened, we realized that the whole tragedy could have been avoided if the three of them had made a suitable agreement. So we started looking around for the answer that would solve the problem for us. The experience of Bob, Walter, and George showed us what the hidden key really was. A binding agreement. And most important of all, the money to fund it. My business is different because I own the majority of the stocks and my partners are in a minority position. We not only have their problems, but the additional one that if I should die first, my partners would have the burden of running the firm without control or power of decision. An impossible situation. Just how much would my stock be worth to my family then? Well, the agreement was easy. All we had to do was approximate the value of our interests and reach an understanding. The problem was money. Where was it to come from? Fortunately, we found a way to guarantee that the money would be available when needed. We'd never have to pay it back, nor would we have to take it out of our business at that time. Our plan works this way. Here are 100 pennies, representing $1 full of the purchase price. We agreed to deposit 3 cents in this first year. And if our agreement becomes operative, we would receive the full purchase price, 100 cents on the dollar, tax-free. It would have cost us just these 3 pennies. If the agreement is not used until, say, 5 years, we will have paid in only 15 cents for each dollar required. And even in 20 years, we will have deposited only 60 cents for each full dollar. During all this time, a large percentage of these deposits will be available to our firm for our business use or emergencies. And if by chance we never need the money for this agreement, and we all live to old age, a large part of these deposits can be used for our retirement. What really tickles us is that our creditors and our bank are just as pleased with this plan as we are. Now, you may be wondering where we found this hidden key. Well, it was handed to us by an insurance man who understood these business problems. And fortunately, we were all able to qualify medically. I suppose that doing business, that life itself is a gamble. But it's a sure thing that you or your family, sooner or later, will be on one side or the other of this inevitable conflict. Why not make use of this hidden key, business life insurance, in order to assure the security of your two most important responsibilities, your family and your business?